Welcome to the Rational Egoist. I'm your host, Michael Liebowitz, and anyone who's familiar with my story knows that I am a huge proponent of personal growth, personal change, self-improvement. And I recently read an article in Psychology Today that really spoke to these issues. So I decided to have the author of the article on my show. He's a transformational coach, speaker, and author of the forthcoming book, Total Self-Trust. Kyle Emanuel Brown, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Michael, and great to connect.
You called your article The Myth of Maintenance, and I thought that was great. But I don't want to give away the lead, so I want you to tell us, what do you mean by the myth of maintenance?
Well, it definitely is one of those things that can spark either motivation in somebody or a little bit of angst in others, because it's a real true self-reflection of understanding that everything in nature follows the same principle, which is either it's growing, blossoming, flourishing, and expanding, or it's whittling away and dying. And there is no pause button. And for me, coming from a background where I used to be a personal trainer, clinical nutritionist to celebrities and pro athletes, I would watch that happen in the health and fitness space specifically, where people would be like, okay, well, I'm just going to lose this weight or get in shape, and then I'm going to be in a maintenance phase. And I'm like, there is no such thing as maintenance. That's, it's basically creating these sacred habits that get you into a state of alignment. And it's not as sexy, but it's facts in this whole process.
So I had a conversation the other day with quite a few people about the idea that a person can be stagnant. And I said, my view is that you're either going forward or backward. And one of the more clever responses to mine was that if a person is compartmentalized, that basically they could reach a state of equilibrium where they're, maybe growing in some areas, not growing in others, and it all just balances out. And my point in response, and I want to get your take on this, was that if somebody is that compartmentalized, they're going backwards, right? There's no way that you're just staying still, and they sure as hell aren't going forward. If they're engaging in that kind of suppression where they're blind to certain parts of themselves, they're receding. Is that an accurate assessment, do you think?
Unquestionably, it's compartmentalizing is compartmenting lies, right? So it's, imagine if I went to my wife or my kids and said, hey, I'm all in on you for the first quarter of this year. Q1, you guys have my attention. Q2, I'm all in on business. Q3, I'm all in on my fitness. And Q4, I'm all in on hanging out with my friends. I'll see you guys Q1. Do you really think things can sit there and stabilize? No, it doesn't work that way. Everything is about turning things over to your subconscious habits and getting them into a place where you are in flow, you are in surrender, but you're still moving down the river. You're still moving towards a place that has intention behind it, has thought behind it. And it's like that thing where everybody goes, wow, I just woke up and I looked and man, I got older. I got out of shape. I got, more confused. Technology took over. Everything sort of happened. My kids got old. Well, if you're present every day and you treat each day like it's its own life, that doesn't happen.
I've heard my whole life that people don't change until they hit rock bottom. Now, myself, I was in prison with a 33-year sentence before I decided to change. And it's easy to say, okay, look, you hit rock bottom and you decided to change. But it's almost like saying the keys are always the last place you look, right? Yeah. Because of course they are, because you found them, you stopped searching. And the point at which I decided to change, you say, oh, you hit a low point, but there's no telling how far I could have dropped. And you say that rock bottom is better thought of as a process rather than a, what's the word you used? I got it over here somewhere, rather than a place. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think you don't fall into rock bottom rapidly. What happens typically is a gentle descent. And this is done unconsciously. It's done step by step. And, you rise that same way. You set intentions, you set devotions. And one person's rock bottom could be another person's comfort zone. Homelessness, for example. I know in my particular situation, if I got to the point of homelessness, that would be considered a rock bottom, and I would do whatever it takes to come up with a solution. I also have friends, people I've even gone to college with, who are currently homeless, living out of their car, and that's not their rock bottom. And while I have incredible compassion, I also understand that perception is reality. It's all about what is that point where you say, well, this is the point I'm going to turn the train around. It's going in a direction right now that isn't serving me. I'm not feeling great. I'm not in alignment. I'm not enjoying my time here on earth. This is it. It's time to create change. And again, it's hard to do that when you're on that lowest level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and you don't have food, clothing, and shelter. You're not thinking about self-actualization. But at the same point, there is a time within each of us where people either crack and they exit, or they shift and they say, I'm going to do whatever it takes.
See, I'm very fortunate that when I decided to change my life around, I had no idea what this was going to encompass. I had no clue the amount of work and the amount of pain and struggle I would have to go through. Otherwise, I might have just stayed in that comfort zone. So you look at somebody and you say, well, this person's homeless, living out of their car. Obviously, it's rock bottom. But to that person, that might be comfortable because of the alternative. If I'm living in a car, I know what I'm doing every day. I get up, I go hustle around, maybe return cans, whatever. But I also know that if I want to change this, okay, what do I got to do? Maybe go stay at a shelter. Now I have to live around other people. I have to go find a job. I have to get myself new clothes. I know I have to focus, maybe shave, find a place to live. Where am I going to do? I don't have credit. How do I build my credit? And that can be overwhelming. So you're right in the sense that the rock bottom is a subjective assessment from the person, and that change might be very painful. And similarly, a person who's just sort of feels themselves coasting through a middle-class life, they might be in that comfort zone where it's just like, I'm okay. Going beyond this is, going to be too much. But as you said, you're not going to stay steady, right? You're either going to go forward or you're going to go backwards. And you compare it, you say on a biological level, physical level, psychological level, everything. And I think that's absolutely correct. And you also made another point, because in addition to doing this for me, this is my goal. One of my goals is to be a successful podcaster, right? That takes some years. So in the daytime, I do real estate title searches. Not in the daytime. I do this in the daytime too. I do both. But I also will keep myself busy. I clean the house. I vacuum. And you talk about how being busy, while it seems productive, might be a mask. It might be masking actual decay. How is that? I think I know what you're going to say, but I want to have you explain it.
That's a great question. I think a lot of times people mistake busyness for productivity. And so much of that is really energetics, right? In your case, if you're keeping your house clean because it has a positive intention and effect on you, where clutter creates a state of mental, emotional chaos. So you want to get things going, keep things clean because you're setting a vision of who you are becoming, and you're becoming that person right now. That's fantastic. If you actually do a truthful audit, not you specifically, but all of us, we do a truthful audit of, okay, let's look at our screen time on our cell phones. Wow. Let's look at how much time we spend watching Netflix or other shows, self-soothing, doing things that are pulling us off of path of who we want to be in our best version of ourselves. It's pretty incredible. Now, again, it's all about what is your own specific goal, what's firing you up, how do you want to contribute to the world? And in my case, the way I look at it is I say, okay, I have had moments where I was at a rock bottom place for me, where within a matter of 15 minutes, we got booted out of our house due to a conflict that had happened with a neighbor, and realtor kicked us out of the house. The landlord kicked us out of the house. The show I had on ESPN, I lost my biggest sponsor. And at the same time, my fitness business was inside the house at the same time. So now I've lost my location of work. And at that moment, I said, well, this is rock bottom. I need to come up with a solution and find a new place to work, a new place to train, a new place to live. And I said, okay, what's the quickest barrier? And I put the show on hold and made some shifts in that moment. So what I think is really important in this situation is that we look at everything from a place of, is this moving me in the direction of living the life I want? Or am I just doing something that other people do with alcohol, like self-soothing, right? Some people self-soothe with alcohol and drugs. Some people self-soothe with distraction from social media and internet. And all of these things are pulling us out of habits that are aligned with the best and highest version of ourselves.
Goals in the change process are vital. I mean, there's the old saying, if you see guys running up and down on a basketball court and there's no hoops, they don't know what to do because there's no goals. I mean, I've heard that, that sort of analogy
Right.
given 100 times in different ways. But you also talk about that goals have to be urgent and have enthusiasm behind them. So why are goals so important, and why is it vital to have that energy, enthusiasm, and urgency?
Great question. There's two ways that you'll want to look at it. The first thing you want to look at is a idea of having a dream or a vision of something. If it is a dream that is taking place in this 3D world, it needs a deadline. It needs to fire you up. It needs to be exciting. It's similar to when you were talking about going through transformation and creating a to-do list. If you start listing everything out after we hit about 3 things, it's overwhelming. So we need to be here and live in the present and follow what's exciting us and the most enthusiastic to the best of our own physical capabilities as far as those things can take us, and in a way that makes us go, I really love what I'm doing and I'm getting into flow state as quick as possible. And the greatest way to do that is to take that goal. I created a process I call the Empower process. And that first step is envision. And you want to create a vision of, okay, where do I want to be about a year from now? If I was to make this thing like a Mad Libs and wave a magic wand, I would look at every single facet of your life and say, what would I call, true bliss, happiness in each one of those categories? And then from there, I would reverse engineer it. So say, okay, well, if I want to be in a situation, where I consider myself in now, where I don't know if I'm working or playing because I'm loving what I'm doing and I'm living my soul's purpose. Well, what does a 1-year path look like to get there? Well, I want to make sure I'm really enjoying the work I'm doing, that I know it's aligned with my best and highest, and that in the meantime, I'm not burning the bridges, but I'm still making sure that bottom layer of Maslow's hierarchy of needs is being met, the food, clothing, and shelter. And I'm utilizing a lot of that other time for both loving on myself to make sure I'm really happy with the human I am and that I'm acting out of alignment. And 2, that I'm inching away towards building up my daydream and moving in that direction. I would look at that with every single category of your life. It fills in with that same concept of maintenance, where I can't be like, well, I'll start dating once, I'll use the analogy of children. Right now, I have a 13-year-old daughter who I adore and a 10-year-old son. If you were to ask my wife right now, is Kyle ready to have kids? She'd be like, no, he's not ready yet. You ask me, I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready to have kids. I can give you 100 reasons why I'm not ready to have kids yet. But I've got 2 kids in middle school right now. So obviously I'm here. I'm making it happen. I love it. I adore it. Having kids is the greatest thing ever for me. But ready? I'm not ready for it. I'm like, I can't afford the kids. I don't have enough time. I'm working on my businesses. I don't have this. But what happens is you focus on the vision and you reprioritize what's important. And to me, making sure I'm showing up for my children in a way that is fun and enthusiastic brings me so much joy that that's better than the old way of like, I'm going to work 100 hours a week now until I almost die. And then maybe I'll spend some time with them before they graduate high school.
What about people that don't know what they want to do? Like for a long time, I didn't know what I wanted. It was fortuitous. I co-authored a book and then I got interviewed on a talk show. And when I got interviewed, the host asked me to be a regular. And from there, I realized that this is what I love. This is what I wanted to do. But before that, I kind of wanted to be a counselor. I got my associates in psychology. I was pretty good at running groups and things of that nature. But my goals changed entirely once I decided I wanted to be a talk show host. But what about someone that just doesn't know? How do you recommend people go about figuring out what it is that they want, what goals they should set?
I love this question because first thing is when I have people go through that envision process and they're writing everything out, I call it a precision manifestation formula. Most of the people I work with are real type A's and everything needs to be perfect. So the first thing I have them do is write the word draft in all capitals right on top. And your question reminds me about my situation going into college, right? So I went to Indiana University. I showed up to meet the guidance counselor. And they said, you need to pick your entire track, right? Have your actions set based on your goal. Your goal is, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, I don't know what I want to major in. I don't know what I want to do with the rest of my life. I've never done anything yet career-wise, but they expect you to know at 18 exactly what you want to be. And they said, well, you need to take the gen eds then. And I go, no, I don't. I'm paying the bill here, within student loans and debt. So I'm going to go take utopias, studying the ideal society, and scuba diving. That was my Tuesday, Thursday. And I got all A's freshman year, first semester. I acclimated to my environment. I followed enthusiasm, what lit me up. And I found ways to incorporate all of these things into my career in some capacity. But I didn't know what I wanted to be. So I ended up majoring in journalism. Well, fast forward, I ended up having a radio show I did on ESPN. So I used my journalism degree there. And I ended up having, I write for Psychology Today now. None of those are my money makers or my careers. Those were both just fun projects and ways that I can help empower people and help give back. But my career ended up in health and fitness and wellness as a celebrity trainer. My career ended up where I owned a meal replacement shake company we had for 17 years. How did I get down that path? Well, it's random walk theory. Lean into what lights you up because none of us are making it out of here alive. So just start focusing on, okay, what am I really excited about? Where's my enthusiasm? Which comes from the Greek enthusiasmos, meaning with spirit. Where's my spirit calling me? And based on where my spirit is calling me, like, okay, what problems do people have that I can either solve now or I can study, learn how to solve that are in alignment with what's lighting me up inside? And then you can reverse engineer it from there. So to think you know what you want to be before you've done what you like to do is hilarious. I think there's no way. Now, there are exceptions, obviously. If somebody's like, I know I've wanted to be a doctor or surgeon since I was 13, like my buddy Mike, who is valedictorian, who, guess what? He's a doc. Great. Like, that's amazing. He's in alignment with his path, but that's a rarity. So do it in a way where it's like, I don't have to have the final answer. Most people don't stay with a job more than a year or so anyway. So just start following the steps and start where you are right now and move in the direction of where you want to go based on what's the next most exciting step. And all of this from a, philosophical or metaphysical lens is about being present in the moment, slowing down, getting out of your head and into your heart. So if you slow down, you breathe, you get excited and you go, what's lighting me up right now? That's going to be that first little flicker of, evidence and inspiration of where you should go.
It's interesting because when you were just talking about, I kind of connected it to what you said earlier. about when you're going to be ready to have kids. Well, I'm not ready yet, but I have them. And it's a similar thing. It's like, if I feel like doing this, if this is where the energy in me is going, I mean, as long as it's productive. I mean, obviously, if I have the urge to go run around chasing butterflies, that probably wouldn't be a wise decision. But if it's productive, don't wait until I'm ready to do it. Just do it. Just start. And that's kind of how you learn, like I did with talk radio. That's how you end up learning that you like something. And if you don't, like you said, well, then you just stop. And most people don't, go beyond a year anyway. I like, you talked about the book, Psycho Cybernetics. And I've read that book, I don't know, maybe 5 times. I really like the book. I like the story of Maxwell Maltz. He's a plastic surgeon. He ends up a motivational guy. Can you tell us a little bit about what the basic idea in psychocybernetics is?
Yeah. So when I read that book, it lit me up as well. Because at the time I read it the first time was maybe about 15 years ago, and I was working with these celebs and pro athletes and rock stars and rap stars. And I was seeing them at a point where externally everybody was like, congratulations, your life is amazing. Internally, there was a lack of fulfillment for so many. And as I looked into what is this lack of fulfillment for somebody who could, let's say they're a billionaire, right? And a lot of that was because they weren't in the process of the journey of the excitement and the enthusiasm of chasing a goal that lit them up. They were at the other end of it. They hadn't set a new goal. They hadn't set a vision of where they were at. And most importantly, what I like to say is, in order to get what you want, you must first love yourself as you are. And if you don't, all that's happening is, based on that internal self-love, we have a upper limit, which Gay Hendricks wrote a great book on upper limiting, which is basically where we hit this wall going up and our self-worth brings us down like a thermostat to a manageable degree. And usually the way that happens is through self-sabotage. And on the other side of that, we have whatever is our bottom based on our self-worth of what we would consider tolerable. Now, some people, that bottom of their self-worth may be like, you overcooked this steak and I'm going to lose my mind right now because I only get, A1, the highest quality meat anywhere. So now again, I think there's something to be looked at reflection wise with that. But again, that is still a way that they can hold themselves. So that internal self-worth and self-value is going to either lead you into a place of getting you what you want and helping you become who you are. Or if it's neglected, you may get something, but immediately knock yourself right back down to a place where you are, back to where you started, if you will, your basic mechanism.
It's been a really long time since I read that book, but I remember him talking about sort of, a guided missile that, seeks out where it's going. And another example he gave is an outfielder, when the ball is hit to the outfield and he's adjusting himself to catch it. And he's basically that's how, when you set goals, when you set a vision of yourself and you basically internalize it into your subconscious, that now your subconscious will help you seek out those things that you want. Like, you might notice something on television you wouldn't have previously noticed that's going to help you go towards it. And I thought that was a very interesting idea. In your experience, was he right? Is that true? That when you set these goals and you kind of make them a part of your subconscious, that your subconscious will help you and guide you toward what you need?
I think that he was spot on. And I like to add to it some of the ancient wisdom that is available for us all today, which is Hermeticism and understanding some of the universal laws like, vibration. If we understand resonance, which we understand really easily when it comes to listening to certain musics, at different times in our life, right? There's moments where you're a little pissed off and you put on something like Eminem, and then all of a sudden you're like, man, I'm just feeling this right now. And you're using that to transmute that energy. And then there's moments where what I do is I'll put on the Beatles or Bob Marley, which both are calibrated at 528 hertz, which is the love frequency. I'll put those on when I have to do something like wash dishes, and all of a sudden I'm in a much better mood and I can get into flow state and do that. And we know the magnetism that happens when somebody is a really fired up, excited, enthusiastic person. They tend to magnetize people who are very similar, and also people who are excited and aiming and seeking to go into that vibration, that experience. We also know on the other side, you have emo music, right? So when I just went with my wife to go see Blink 182, the opening band was emo. And it was very interesting because that's a really different vibe than Blink. And you would look in the crowd and you would feel the heaviness, kind of like the Emoji Movie, the sadness and the depths of the people sitting in their chairs like this, waiting for their emo band to come on, because they were just fat. They're stuck in their feels, really heavy, and everything had this really heavy vibration to them. And then you had those who were like fired up, like, let's go, Blink, right? All in the same ball arena here in Denver. And it was really wild to watch. So there is that piece as well of understanding resonance, which, some people would consider it woo, but what's happening right now is modern science is finally catching up to that ancient wisdom. And it wasn't at the time that Maltz wrote that book, and all of that now that works in synergy and harmony really, really well.
You mentioned flow. What is flow?
Well, I was on a panel for flow back in the day at a health conference, and I said, as I was hearing everybody talk about their expertise in flow, I said, I thought flow was the woman from the car insurance
Alice?
commercials.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Alice. I remember flow.
Oh, she's flow as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and in the car insurance commercial.
That's right. That's right. So flow is basically a state. If you look at a river, for example, the river flows naturally, and we do have this, similar to Star Wars, there is this universal underlining flow state, which comes when we slow down, we catch our breath, we tap in to this beautiful energy that is moving through us at all times. And flow is also a state that we can get into when we are going with that current of life and not trying to drive the car, but we hop into the back seat. You see it happen in athletics all the time when someone is playing the game and they're out of their head and they're in their heart and they're acting like a little kid. Little kids hit flow state all the time. And you'll see somebody like Steph Curry just go off, and he'll be smiling and moving and dancing, and boom, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. That is just an absolute flow state. So that is not something that happens only in sports. It can happen as you're working in your workday, as you're creating projects. And I like to tell people the greatest way to really get into that state is to get out of your head and into your heart.
Now I got a challenge for you. The guy who came up with the whole flow idea and did writing on it, can you pronounce his name?
It is the longest, most challenging name I've ever seen. And if I saw him out in public, I'd say, well, I think he's actually may have passed now, but I would just say, hey, buddy, hey, pal, hey, friend, sir.
Oh, the guy that came up with
or
the
professor,
idea,
because I think he was a professor as well.
now I can't. I'm drawing a blank on the guy who wrote the book on learned optimism. Martin Seligman. Martin Seligman just called him Mike because it's like Mihaly Shabbat.
Mihaly, yeah.
It's a tough one.
I have a friend who studied under him, and every time he has said his name, I glaze over. It's too difficult for me. It's way beyond my pay grade.
So go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's some of the most brilliant, people in the cognitive area come from places like Eastern Europe, where they have names that, are, shortened down. In my case, Ellis Island last name, it's not the same. So
Psycho-Cybernetics, great book. What other books would you recommend along these lines to help somebody not go backwards, to help them go forward and reach the self-actualization that you were talking about?
Well, gosh, there's so many. One of my favorites is Starting with Man's Search for Meaning.
Oh,
Uh,
great book. Yeah.
Viktor Frankl. I think, again, if you can have that enthusiasm and that self-awareness after having gone through something as horrifying as the Holocaust, then more power to you. That is absolutely incredible. And I'm a big fan of stepping away just from Western approaches to life. So I think tapping into understanding Taoism, Buddhism, Hinduism, and really looking at ancient philosophies where speed is not the goal, right? Wu Wei, the idea of really getting into that surrender and stepping into that flow. Alan Watts has a book called Wu Wei that is beautiful, where he's really taking the Eastern approach of like, not everything in this hustle culture in Western societies where it's all at. And often, again, it's about getting into that resonance, collaborating, co-creating, thinking in a bigger state that expedites results, not the hustle. So a great perspective book as well that I'll add. One of my friends and mentors, Steve Siebold, had a book called 177 Secrets of, Mental Toughness. It's not off the top of my head right now, but Steve Siebold is his name. And like 177 Mental Toughness Secrets of the World Class. That's the book. And, he had always said, if it was the smartest and hardest working people, or the most read people, those who were hustling the hardest, that were the most successful, you would have the guys who are working their butts off in their fields or in the fields, and you'd have the librarians who would all be the billionaires. But it's not about the hustle. It's about the alignment, the thinking bigger, and the risk taking to, step into that best version of yourself.
Like I said, I love motivational books, self-help books. I've read a ton. Think and Grow Rich, I probably read 20 times. As a Man Thinketh, I think they're great. One thing I don't like, and it's not with those particular books, but that have sort of made their way into the genre, who have been a part of it for a long time, are books like The Secret. Somebody sent me the book The Secret one time. And it has this idea that the way you think is going to determine absolutely your life. Now, I do think if you tend to think positively, put in effort, have that enthusiasm towards goals, you're likely to have a better life. But it's not guaranteed. Tragedy happens. Mistakes happen. But in that book, The Secret, and in some others I've read, they talk about almost as if, or actually as if, everything that happens to you is a result of your thinking. So if you get hit by a bus, that's because of the way you're thinking. And I just think that first of all, it's bullshit. But secondly, I think it's dangerous to buy into that. Have you ever, if first of all, do you agree with me? And secondly, have you ever experienced people that really buy into that, and then when it doesn't work out, they sort of plummet?
I think any philosophical concept that gets brought down just into a small little bite size, the one thing, thinking that anything is that easy, they're missing the boat. And that goes not only for the metaphysical world, but it also goes for the physical world. It's no different than in, my previous field of fitness and nutrition, thinking that all I got to do is drink apple cider vinegar and I'm going to look like Schwarzenegger. There's a lot more to it. There's more than meets more to meets the eye, right? Just like Transformers. I think human beings are incredibly complex. Earth is the most complex school there is. Like, this is mastery level difficult, just sheer existing. And in some cases, it's way easier now than it was back in the days in the 1800s when we didn't have all this stuff. In some ways, it's way harder because there's so much exponentially fighting for our attention, and so much that is pulling humans away from understanding and remembering how powerful we are. So I think there are kernels of truth in it, but I don't think it's as simple as like, hey, just think about money and it's just going to show up. Now, in some cases, yes, there are synchronicities, but I think there's more steps to any process of manifestation than just the thinking about it. And I do think in so many of these concepts, when if you look at some of the work of, that's happening right now with quantum science and understanding that our perception can create and shift our reality based on our belief and our resonance and our envisioning that magic can happen, synchronicities can happen. I definitely do love and believe in magic in that sense, but I also understand that it's kind of like, hey, I may go to yoga and get really, really flexible, but I may miss the whole point of yoga and just kind of be a bendy a-hole who only cares about myself. Does that make me a yogi? No, it makes me a guy who's really flexible, who shows up to yoga class, who's self-absorbed. So there's a holism to all of this and a remembering the point of the whole thing, which is, some of the stuff we live in kindergarten, we learn in kindergarten of like really focus on being a good human with great intentions. That will get you a lot farther.
All right. Before I let you go, did we miss anything? Did I leave anything out? Forget to ask anything?
I don't think anything's been left out. First off, thank you so much for having me. But
thank you.
I definitely would love to leave anyone listening here with the converse of what I just said. While things may be more holistic and more complex, you can simplify all of this and distill it truly down to the idea of like, yes, I am writing for psychology today, which is very heady. But one of the greatest ways to get towards what you want is that getting out of your head and into your heart, and really just creating some space between your present chaos and your true self, and doing that through the breath. The breath, just slowing down. It doesn't have to be a breathwork class, and creating a little bit of space where you can sit back, observe, and contemplate. That art of contemplation has been lost. And just take a look at your life, away from all the chaos, away from all the technology, away from all the things that are pulling for our attention, and just asking yourself some really simple questions that little kids do all the time. Like, what do I want? Where do I want to go? Who do I want to become? And doing it without all the breaks and other people's opinions involved, and just realize that anyone can get there, because I've sat at the table with so many people that people go, wow, they must be freaking amazing. And the reality is like, yeah, but so are you. There's nothing extra special within this individual more than their focus towards whatever their desired goal was.
Kyle, where can people find you? I know you said psychology today, but you have a website too, right?
Yes. So the best way to find me is on socials. I'm at Kyle Emanuel Brown. And my website is rapidharmony.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much again for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
This was super fun, Michael. Thank you for having me, and happy to drop in with you today. Your story is super inspiring as well, man.
Thank you. For now, this is the Rational Egoist signing out. I'm Michael Leibowitz. And remember to check out Mark Pellegrino and me every day at 12 Eastern, 9 Pacific on the Capitalist Corner live on YouTube. For now, take care.